Imagine if a guy had to do everything from cleaning to cooking, buying groceries, raising the kids, dropping them off to school, making sure they're doing their homework, and still perform the same way at work. It wouldn't quite happen.
Yeah.
So as we become more equal at home, as we promote more of that, we'll start to see that it becomes easier for women to also start coming out and spending more time, right? So equal opportunity at work equates to equal opportunities at home. Ensuring that our professional development is not happening at the cost of our personal development. Their personal development is equally important, and both of them have to go hand in hand. Right after business school, I was passing through one of the finance classes, and I saw them discussing ratios. Really liked what I was hearing. Said, okay, this is what I want to do. When I came back, I was again so anxious that I moved to starting to talk to people the day I landed here, because I had to make sure that it was a success. It couldn't fail.
Thanks a lot, Pearl, for giving us your time today, and very excited to hear your view on women representation in the world of investing. Starting with this billion-dollar question as to why do you think there is such lesser women representation when it comes to private equity and venture capital?
Yeah, that's definitely a billion-dollar question. But I would say that, Radhika, it's a reflection of our society as well, right? I believe that anything of this sort really starts from home, and it starts from all the way back. How you've been brought up, what is the system at home, how are you promoted to achieve what you want to achieve. And if we want to make changes in the society at any level or at the corporate level, some of these changes really have to start coming from the beginning. I think we were chatting about this before as well, and you mentioned that why at the analyst level we see women, but going up the ladder, the number of women reduce. I mean, it's also, I would say a lot of the times I have seen that, women have to struggle to make home and office work. As you start growing older, you have family responsibilities, you probably get married, have kids to raise, and so on and so forth. And I think it becomes important at that stage that we really understand that how's the society set up to support these women at home so that they can continue to do their work in the office. Imagine if a guy had to do everything from cleaning to cooking, buying groceries, raising the kids, dropping them off to school, making sure they're doing their homework, and still perform the same way at work. It wouldn't quite happen.
Yeah.
So as we become more equal at home, as we promote more of that, we'll start to see that it becomes easier for women to also start coming out and spending more time, right? So equal opportunity at work equates to equal opportunities at home.
Right. Yeah, like the saying also goes, charity begins at home. So we have to really start everything from there. But tell me one thing, that did you ever face this issue of your work credit being taken over by the male counterparts while you were growing up?
To be very honest, maybe I have been lucky, or maybe I'm too naive to really focus on whether this has happened, but it hasn't. And most of my career has been in the US and in Europe. And I've realized that people have been quite supportive. In fact, I have mostly been the only girl in several offices, and I haven't felt that I haven't gotten the kind of work that I would like to, or I haven't been supported at work because I'm a woman. It might be because I'm not performing well on that particular assignment. It could be that my relationship with the client is not that well to sort of push me forward. But having done all the work, taking credit and giving it to a man because somebody else is a man, fortunately, I haven't seen that happen. I think the differences would be a little bit more subtle, maybe. That let's say if you are a woman sitting across, I connect with you more, and hence I can convince you to either take my money or I can convince you to do business with me.
Mm.
Similarly, for a man, if there is a man sitting on the other side, it could potentially be easier that they connect with the person better, because as they say, things don't get done because numbers look good, right? They get
Yeah,
done because people like people.
correct.
And hence that could be a function, the connect that comes from it. And as we see more and more women come in, you'll have equal number of people connecting with each other, right, to sort of
Yeah.
reduce that as well. But it's not as stark of a difference that I have seen.
Yeah, but that's a very good point that you raised, that the other women should also elevate the other women in the room. And but most of the times, what happens is that there is so much of competition amongst fewer women that people don't want to support each other. And that's also one of the reasons that I heard from one of the Silicon Valley investors as to why there is a lesser representation. But you did speak of the fact that you worked in the US and Europe as well. How is the culture different there from India, from your experience? As you said, it's more open there, which I agree to. And what else did you experience which might not have been the case in India if you would have been here?
Um, I would say that each country has its own sort of culture, not just country, but even each state, each office has its own culture, right? In terms of the US is definitely all about work hard, party hard, where it's very much appreciated that you do take work beyond just your 9 to 5 and give it your all in. I would say that in Europe, it tends to be a little bit more um, boundaried that way. And then, of course, in India as well, you see that work relationships go way further. But in terms of work, there is still a little bit of a boundary. But having said that, I think these are some subtle differences that have really come about that I have been able to observe by doing financial services across all three countries. But because the world is becoming global, these cultures have started to merge as well. I spent 8 years in the US, 8 to 9 years in the US, a couple years in in London, and then a year, 6 months to a year in Bombay before I actually started Eximius. So at Eximius, the culture is very much driven by what we want. But across these three roles, other than the kind of relationships you develop and how your boundaries with work really end, I haven't seen much of a culture difference in terms of the expectations that people have. We're all humans. We want to grow. We want to learn. We want to sort of achieve the next best thing. And we want to be seen during that, which remains the same all across.
Right. But you said the culture at Eximus is very different from the other three roles you had in the past. So why don't you draw a comparison table for us as to how your experiences were while you were working the job and now when you were the founder?
I wouldn't say that it is different. Sorry if you implied that. What I meant is that in all of those places, the cultures were already defined
Hmm.
by people who had come before me or people who were already there. And hence, you mold yourself in that culture, which tends to be highlighted in the differences that I talked about.
Yeah.
Since Eximius is something we have started, it's very much a function of the cultures that I potentially have experienced and have brought on with the founding team members, what they bring to the table, and then a mesh of the culture that gets created as a result of
Mm.
that, right? So I would say that we ourselves are not very different. If I have to define the culture at Eximius, we are also work hard, party hard.
Yeah.
We want to sort of, we know we are a small fund who started only a year ago, a year and a half ago. We want to leave a mark and we want to work towards that. We very much believe in our founders and to be able to deliver the best for our founders, right? So from that perspective, we go beyond to sometimes beyond work hours as well, to ensure that our founders get what they want to
Yeah.
be able to execute their business well.
Mhm.
But at the same time, while doing all of that, ensuring that we are having a good time and
Yeah.
ensuring that our professional development is not happening at the cost of our personal development.
Hmm.
Their personal development is equally important, and both of them have to go hand in hand. And if I were to tell you one thing, I have seen less of a difference in terms of countries, but more of a difference in terms of generation. I think
Hmm.
the current generation, as opposed to the previous generation, actually focuses a lot on ensuring that both personal and
Yeah.
professional development are equally managed, which is something we respect quite a bit here.
Got it. Yeah, that's a very vibrant and energetic culture that you define. But how did the name come about, and when did you think that it's time that you start your own fund?
Yeah, I actually had been tinkering with this idea for a while. I come from an entrepreneurial background, but
Yeah.
in a very small city. I wouldn't even call it a city, it's actually a tier 4 town that doesn't exist on the map. But my parents had a small business there, and we were on a street where we would go out and hang out quite a bit. And there were other businesses too, and they all knew each other, they all supported each other, and they were all very enthusiastic about actually making sure something was there was a mark being left with the business that they were doing in a very sort of ethical, honest way, right? And I think that left a huge impression on my mind. Throughout my career, whatever I did, there was this longing to come back and give back to this community, and that was in a way channeled through Eximius, because investing is something I'd been doing for the last 10 odd years and
Yeah.
quite enjoyed. I really saw myself being able to thrive in this career. I was like, why don't I mix and match the two loves that I have? One is, pursuing entrepreneurship with an angle of giving to the community,
Yeah.
and second is investing. So that is why we started Eximius. Eximius is a Latin word for excellent, and
Okay.
what that really sort of implies is that we want to be good at what we do and be able to give the best that we can to our founders to aid them in their journey.
Got it. And so, why don't you talk about some of your initial investments and how is the journey there when you just started and were out in the market? How did you market your fund, and how was it to raise money for your own fund?
Right. In the initial days, it's definitely very difficult, right? Because you're a new person in the market, and for us, it was very, I would say, timely or untimely in a way, because we hit the market to fundraise in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I came back in February of 2020, and my first meeting was on 14th of March. If you remember, on
Yeah.
22nd of March, the entire country was under lockdown.
Correct.
And I was just sitting there in my living room taking calls and thinking that what do I do? How do I go about it? So we took it slow, one step at a time. We said, let's create a small fund. Let's, start to sort of invest a little bit from whatever money we have, whatever money we are getting,
Hmm.
to continue to support founders, build a track record for our investors. And when the first investor sort of comes about and really bets on us, we'll take it from there. It took us first 3 or 4 months until September. I really didn't have much visibility.
Yeah.
But we did get that first backing, right? And then from there, things started to look very, I wouldn't say easy, but still seamless. And, by March of next year, we had the fund up and running. And then again, the minute, so all throughout the fundraising and the investing environment is not too conducive. But the minute we have raised the fund and we have our first close, the market completely turns. If you
Yeah.
remember, April was the first month where there were 9 or 10 unicorns created. If I
Yeah.
don't count me on that number, but a number of unicorns came up. The funding environment was just insane. Deals were getting done in 2 days. Term sheets were being shopped around like it's nothing at all.
Mhm.
And that was the first month where we were deploying capital. And I remember just like taking a step back and thinking like,
Yeah.
holy shit, what's you can definitely edit that.
Yeah.
Just taking a step back and thinking like, oh my god, what is happening?
Yeah.
uh, we hadn't expected it. So it took us a little while to really sort of go back on the value prop that we were bringing to the table and see if that value prop was still aligning with the founders.
Hmm.
What we saw aligns very well is that um, good relationship is never ignored.
Yeah.
uh, no matter who the founder is, they would always appreciate somebody who understands them and who's looking out for them, which has been our motto. We will, until we deploy capital, we understand we have a fiduciary duty to our investors and we do all the work and diligence possible in the world. But once we've deployed capital, we know that our customer is also our founder.
Yeah.
One has to really sail through, and they are probably sacrificing a lot personally and professionally to be in that. So we need to support and we need to go all out to do as much as we can. We might not be able to solve every single problem of theirs, and we will definitely not be building their business for them. But whatever we can do little to ensure that they can save that half an hour or 1 hour of their week is what we want to do and bring to the table. And
Got
we don't ask for too many MISs, we don't ask for too many numbers. We're not the kind of investor that will call you and say, like, hey, tell me what is happening in the business, why are you not doing well? We are there to ask on every call, what is that one problem that if I were to solve for you, your life will be much better. Please don't give me more than one problem because I will not be able to solve realistically. Give me one and give me 15 days. I will go back and do my best to solve it for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very good approach. If you could give me some examples on a no names basis of how did you help the founders?
Several, right? I think today we have about 17 to 18 portfolio companies,
Okay.
and we do this regularly, if not every month, every alternate month, with each one of them. And it
Okay.
also happens in a very natural format where just through conversation, you understand what could potentially be bothering. And then you ask if this is the biggest problem for you, and then double click on it and go back. So it could be something related to, for example, hiring, which last year tech hiring was a massive problem for them. A lot of them couldn't close their CTOs. A lot of them were spending 2 to 3 months hiring and still not being able to bring folks, which has a lot of consequences, right? It slows down your product development. Because of that, you also are not able to spend time acquiring customers, and overall, you end up burning more. So we actually have an HR, in-house HR, who helps with that. She has a fresh database where the minute you tell you want candidates, she can hit the road and start sort of recruiting for you. Second is a lot of the fintech companies require banking partnerships and NBFC partnerships, which again, given that the trust needs to be developed over time, sometimes as a new company, it takes them anywhere between 3 months to 6 months to be able to sort of enter the door.
Yeah.
We continue to build relationships with these companies and these stakeholders on an ongoing basis by showing them different companies we've invested in, meeting them, just having a cup of tea with them every now and then. And when the right time comes, making that introduction, which could be a win-win for both of them. Similarly, we have an ex-founder on the team as well who has built communities before and has cracked GTM as well. So one of the companies currently that we are working with is they wanted to understand who could be their initial top TG. We sat with them, we brainstormed with them, we identified that there are two top TGs that we can really double click on. And within a week or so, we sort of plug their product into those TG groups through our community and network, right? And this has helped them validate that initial product before they start doing a public launch.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, on the top of my mind, there are three, but it's just an ongoing process with this team of a person who builds community and the HR person, as well as the networks that we built. We try to make sure that we cover as much as possible. Then, of course, the fourth aspect is fundraising. When they go out to fundraise, working with them on pitches, working with them on their storyline to continue to help them refine it, and then making the right introductions as well, while ensuring that market intel is provided to them.
Got it. You also mentioned that you come at a stage before they go public. You help them with the GTM strategy. So, what kind of sectors and stages do you come at as a VC?
Right. So we come in at the very, very early stages, and hence why before they go live with the product or public with the product, we have some time to help them.
Yeah.
We are happy to work with the founder the minute they think of an idea. So
Okay.
as soon as they think of an idea, we can start brainstorming with them. We can start helping them out. And when we think that there is enough trust developed and the product is heading in a direction where we could potentially bet on it, we go ahead and put our capital. At that point as well, the product doesn't need to be ready. The product can just be a very very toned down version of the MVP, for us to start getting an idea of how the market, the beta users are looking at it. And then of course they go public, right? Or they go live. In terms of these sectors, and because we come in at such an early stage, for us, unless we don't have some of the sectoral expertise, we really won't be able to add value or help,
Yeah.
at least at the product end. So we take a mix of a sector specific and a sector agnostic investing thesis. We have fintech, health tech, and media entertainment, three sectors where we primarily focus on. And we build deep sort of user centric as well as industry centric thesis within each one of these segments to ensure that we know what are the white spaces where we can potentially have founders building. So once we see a founder who might be building in that segment or is close to that segment, we start working with them and providing them with any research that we have collected.
Okay, that's very focused, and I've rarely seen VCs come at such an early stage and build with the founders. But since you said that it's just been a year or so, how's the progress been so far with the founders from ideation to the level that they are now?
Yeah. It's been fantastic. In fact, I mean, we have done 17 investments. So we invest out of three pools of capital. One is the main fund, which is a 75 crore fund, where we are looking to invest in about 25 to 30 companies with check sizes of 250K to 300K, and follow on in a select few with $1 million. Out of that fund, we have done 17 investments, about 11 where capital has gone out, about 6 where capital hasn't been deployed, but it's in the progress, and paperwork is going on. And out of these 11 where capital has already gone out, we have had 2 companies where up rounds have happened, and 1 company where 2 up rounds have already happened.
Okay.
And this is all within 1 year of deployment. Because I still remember our first check actually left the bank account in September of last year. Yes, in 2021, after a crazy sort of a quarter of fundraising, right? So it's quite encouraging to see that. Then the second product through which we invest is called the Gaming Lounge, which is our gaming IP, where we aim to provide community, content, and capital to gaming companies, primarily based in India, through network of global gaming studios and investors as well, so that they can propel their growth.
Yeah.
And through that platform, we have done 1 investment, which is an esports company doing fantastically well. And then the third is, of course, the angel investments that I do in my personal capacity, which are more sort of relationship building investments, through which we understand the founder a little more. And if everything works out, we could potentially take a bet from the fund. But that's not necessarily for that. It is more of a relationship check for the best founders out there that we want to stay in touch with.
Got it.
Overall, I would say from all three, we would have done about 34, 35 investments so far. In my personal capacity, I have 15 companies across US, UK, and India.
Yeah. You said you have so many resources to offer to these founders. So how did you build on that?
Yeah, it was thinking from very first principles basis, right? That if we go after these sectors, what is it that is required in their journey? What is it that we can potentially bring from an outside perspective? And how do we really go about building on those? And it was just putting one step at a time and taking it up from there.
Okay. This requires a lot of effort. I can totally assume it. But for somebody who is wanting to raise a fund, what is the process and how did you go about it? If you can just try to help our audience with it, because there might be a lot of women investors, for example, wanting to raise a fund of themselves. So if you could just tell us how it happens.
Right. So I would say that the first thing is to really first identify what is the wedge in the market that you as a VC fund want to solve. Once you've identified that, then understanding that do you have the key pillars that are required to launch a VC fund. Number one, am I getting proprietary deal flow? Number two, once I get proprietary deal flow, do I know, um, do I have unique insights in some of these segments or some of these areas to identify the good ones from the not so good ones? Number three would be that once I've invested, do I have the key elements to add value to them so that I'm not just money in the cap table?
Hmm.
And number four is, of course, do I also, through all of these, have a way to be able to consistently give returns, or at least know that I can give consistent returns to my investors who have trusted me with the capital?
Yeah.
Once that framework is ready in your mind, is then you start identifying who would be the right sort of investor for you. There are three types of investors that put money in a VC fund. And the first category is institutions. These are large sort of capital providers like your banks and FIs that can invest money. Second would be your family offices and corporates. These are large conglomerates or small sort of businesses that would want to deploy capital towards VC and startup. And third are, of course, your HNIs and second-time entrepreneurs, right? Being able to also identify that at your stage, which are the segments that you want to raise from. So, for example, we raised primarily from HNIs and family offices because we knew that at that point that was the category that would have fit us the best.
Yeah.
Then once you've narrowed it down, then it is about pitching, which is not very different from how startups pitch.
Yeah. Okay. But
And,
I think also it might be taking a lot of time, right? What's the timeline looking like?
so it does take a lot of time. A typical fund can take anywhere between, I would say, 9 months to 12 months. Sometimes larger funds can also take beyond 12 months, up to 24 months. And you do that by having multiple closes, where rather than raising all the money at once, you can raise in 2 to 3 closes, where you can say that the first close will be 40% of my target money.
Yeah.
Second close can be 60% of my target money, and so on and so forth. That allows you to be on the road and race, but at the same time continue to deploy, so
Yeah.
that you can also build your track record along the way and show that.
Yeah. You also mentioned one more important aspect before raising a fund is that you need to know if you have a proprietary deal flow. So how did you build that for yourself? Because that was a question coming to my mind, in this interview itself, that how do you find founders at such an early stage? I mean, I can understand people who come later on, they might be hearing about the founders in the media or from the bankers. But how do you come across these very raw founders who are just at the ideation stage?
Yeah. So I would say it's different ways of really building that, right? I was doing angel investments beforehand as well, through which I had a network of founders that I had invested in, and folks that were building in the space. Some of the angel investors, some of the angel investments that I had done, I was also working with the founders regularly. I was working with them almost every day, sometimes twice a week, to just help them on different aspects, so I could understand what's happening in the market, and through that also some of the deal flow comes. And third aspect is, of course, we launched a product called DotReview, which is Glassdoor for VCs. And for that, we really built a network around to identify how founders were looking at things and how they were viewing this market, which further expanded my network and hence allowing me to get more deal flow from there. So I would say there is no one way to really do this, right? This is a process that you have to continue to improve. But to get started, these were the ways we did it.
Got it. Just taking a step back, you said that it all started from you angel investing. So, what was the starting point of you getting into this industry? If you could remember that moment where you just had started into it, what was that first instance when you
This
got
is
into the ecosystem?
right after business school.
Okay.
I was passing through one of the finance classes and I saw them discussing ratios. Really liked what I was hearing. Said, okay, this is what I want to do. Applied for a program where you get to work with industry professionals and manage a fund that the university had. This was at Macomb School of Business at University of Austin. And through that, I got into an endowment fund that invests in 200 plus other venture capital and private equity funds. And
Okay.
during my time there, I met with over 50 or 60 managing partners to really understand how they were building their portfolio. So say that this was way back in 2011, but that was the first time I knew that this career was for me, and I just had to continue to develop on it.
Oh my God, this gives me goosebumps as to how you know that this is what you want to do 10 years later. And now that you're into this fun business, it's still a 10-year long journey. So you were already set for the next 20 years of your life as to what you want to do.
I would say 50 years, right? Like, I would suggest to everybody who's wanting to start a fund that I see folks who are starting funds like starting startups.
Yeah,
Uh, the journey of a job is maybe 2 years. The journey of a startup is maybe 5 to 10 years. The journey of a fund starts at 10 years. And if you
yeah,
really are building a large fund, it can go up to 30 to 40 years. So you
correct.
need, and your professional career will probably be 60 years at best, right? So you
Yeah.
need to be sure that, 3/4 of your professional career will need to be dedicated to this if you really want to do it well and make it big.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point that after the first successful fundraise, you might also want to do the second one at a larger scale. And that in itself will take much time. Great. But in all of these processes, which is the decision that you regret taking and which is the decision that you're really proud of? I'm assuming Eximus is the decision which you're really proud of. But over to you to answer that.
Yeah. No, you got that right, girl. Definitely, I would say the decision that I'm most proud of is being able to convince myself to leave. So before I moved here, when I was in London, I worked for a $70 billion fund,
Hmm.
which
Oh,
comes with its own scale and, of course, monetary, non-monetary benefits, right?
yeah.
You have a team, you have credibility, you have with 70 billion also compensated in a similar manner. Being able to leave all of that and move back to India and start fresh was a difficult decision. I remember after I quit for 10 days, I was so anxious that I couldn't sleep. So I literally had 10 days of sleepless nights. And I came back, I was again so anxious that I moved to starting to talk to people the day I landed here because I had to make sure that it was a success. It couldn't fail. But now looking back, that is a decision I'm most proud of. Because if I hadn't left, if I weren't brave enough to take that decision, I really couldn't have created anything from there on that I have, right? Now, this is what is going to define my career for the next few years. And for all of us who are sort of waiting to take that plunge into entrepreneurship, just going at it, doing it, um, is very important. You can't be sitting and thinking much. And I think that has been my learning through this as well. That if you really truly believe that you would want to try something, life is too short not to do it. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
To your second point about regret, maybe I'm not. I'm too much of a forward-looking person to sort of know what I regret. When you asked me that question, I was thinking, what have I regretted? Maybe I've regretted several decisions at that particular point. But to be very honest, I don't remember them. And
Yeah.
I'll have to sit back and really think for hours to see which one I regretted. Because I tend to look at the positives of what comes out of a situation and see how we can make lemonade out of lemons served, right?
Yeah.
And this is not just to say it on this platform, but very honestly, because I know you sent me a few questions and I was sitting down and thinking, what have I regretted?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have.
Yeah, that's actually a very good thing because all those things in the past doesn't really matter to you because now you've really moved forward from there, and I think that's what defines success for all of us. But I'm really curious to also know that uh, fortunately everything went right into the place where you wanted it to be, and that's why you are where you are. But what could have gone wrong if you wouldn't have done X or Y, or you wouldn't have maybe thought about that and not gone ahead into that path? I mean, I'm just thinking on the opposite spectrum as to what is it that why do people fail, what goes wrong? So I'm just trying to understand your thoughts there.
Yeah, I would say again, too early to really say that, right? There are still, we have miles to go. And as we say that VC journey is very long.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't call ourselves to have found PMF yet. I would say we have an MVP, and we are fine tuning our MVP on our
yeah,
way to getting PMF. And how we achieve PMF and scale will really define how well we do and where we are from here on. But I would say that things that we have done right is always think two steps ahead of where we are and see what could potentially go right or wrong there and accordingly take action. So, for example, last year I knew that this year the markets would crash
yeah,
because I was talking to investors in the US and I realized that inflation in the US was never as high as what they were seeing. A lot of the inflation wasn't even getting reported. And some of the larger LPs were asking questions like, how do you protect yourself against inflation? And for us, that was a cue that it could be bigger than what we have ever seen. And hence, we always need to be prepared. Did that mean that we stopped investing? No. Did that mean that we didn't raise? Not at all. What we did is we took a little bit more pragmatic view to investing. We said,
yeah.
look, we are seeing a lot of term sheets being written in 2 days, but we will follow our due process.
Hmm.
If we are missing out on certain deals because of that, let
Yeah.
it. And we have missed out.
Hmm.
But until we don't get that bare minimum comforts, you can never get 100% comfort in the early stage. So many unknowns. But that bare minimum comfort, we will not move ahead with the process. And we stuck to it. The second thing that we knew is that we are not going to deploy all our capital in this year um, and then sort of wait for the markets next year, which a lot of folks, I wouldn't name them, but I did deploy a decent chunk of capital in the last year because of how the environment was, right? We were very pragmatic that we only had 15% of the capital deployed by the end of the year because we
Hmm.
wanted to reserve the rest 85% for when the markets could actually substantiate good returns.
Yeah.
So some of those ended up like in, of course, the Ukraine war, which nobody had ever predicted,
Hmm.
did propel and accelerate this process. If not, then we wouldn't have seen slowdown until Q3 or Q4. So of course, some of these events weren't accounted for that also played in our favor. But I would say that sort of just knowing what are the bets that you're taking and where things could go wrong, even if you can't control it, could help.
Yeah, thinking ahead of time always helps, and that crystal ball gazing, as crazy it sounds, is very important to do. But like you told about what right things you did, which landed you here, what were the bad moments while you were helping founders? What kind of failures you encountered? Which investments didn't work out really well, if at all that happened? If you could tell us about those moments in your deal making at Eximus or in your previous stint in different places.
Yeah. So I would say again at Eximius too early.
Yeah,
Given we only started deploying capital last year, most of our companies are doing fairly well today, or they're
yeah,
at least on the path of raising. And if they are not, then they have enough capital to really sort of pivot, improve their product. So I wouldn't call them a failure yet. I would just say that some of them are in the process of developing their product,
yeah,
right? So we won't be able to really give a holistic
yeah.
view here. I would say that in the past there was an investment of mine that did terribly poorly after we made that investment. And there, the biggest learning that I have had is getting married to the investment ahead of before the due diligence is completed. Um, why we had that was a proprietary deal that we had sourced. We were working because it was a public company that we were taking private. We were working on that company even before the company was ready that they wanted to do it.
Okay.
So we were collecting all the public documents. We were constantly refining our thoughts on it. We were sort of building our financial model and understanding the returns that we could get out of it. Um, and we then went and convinced the management of the company that this should be the right decision they should be taking. After that convincing had happened, is when we started to really diligence the depths of the company, because that is when the company will start opening up their data.
Yeah.
But by then, my sense is that we were already so sold on it, because we had spent 1 year actually convincing and building, that when the real data started to come, it was more like completing the diligence rather than diligencing the company.
Yeah.
And that did have a huge impact later. And that's a learning that I carry even today, that I don't want to complete a diligence process for the sake of it and get married to the idea on the first call itself, even though we might like it. But have an open mind that we have to finish the diligence process in the right format.
Yeah, yeah. Got it. So speaking of this, which was the most successful deal that you worked on that you maybe got it from scratch and led it to the finishing line?
Yeah. Again, I would say at Eximius, we have quite a few, right? Like one of our companies, Jar, is doing fantastically
Yeah.
well. They have raised two, in fact, three rounds since last year. They have 350 million valuation today, which is phenomenal for an early stage company that started in April of 2021.
Yeah.
Similarly, our second investment, EkaCare, is also doing phenomenally well. We've seen great returns on that. And this has all happened within 1 year.
Okay.
But I would say that the one that truly we got the capital back as well, and we were able to justify the returns to our investors, was in my previous role, where an investment that we made was a small investment for the size of that fund, which is a 200 million sort of an investment. But the way we had structured it, the kind of company that ended up sort of, looking, as we started talking to the management and visiting their facilities and seeing more of it, just made it just built on our conviction a lot more, right? So it was a company that had that we were introduced to. We weren't quite sure of it, but we started to sort of dig deeper. And every conversation we had, it was becoming more and more apparent that they were onto something big.
Yeah.
And then the kind of chemistry that we had, and the way we structured that particular transaction, both for both the founders as well as the investors, also made it quite clear that this was going to be a winner. And within 2 years, it was a winner. We got 3x of our money back,
Wow.
which is quite a good outcome for something that's a $200 million deal. And also, we hadn't seen something happen that quickly. So that's one that I quite cherish. It made all of us a decent chunk of money.
Yeah. Right. Speaking of your successes, what is your definition of success, though? I'm very curious to know, because you said that there were many moments in your life where you flourished and made others also thrive. So I would like to understand from you as to what does success mean to you?
I think to me, success is definitely leaving a mark on the people around. If you can make somebody's life better and get that feeling that, yes, indeed, they're appreciating that their life has improved by the efforts that you've made, that I would say makes you feel really good, right? And to me, that would be success.
Got it.
That cannot happen all the time, and we have to prioritize how we do it. But the larger goal would be to leave a mark.
Got it. And what are the questions preliminarily that you ask the founders on your first call? If somebody needs to get in touch with you, they should be prepared in their minds, right? Okay, these are the questions coming my way. So if you could tell our audience, what is it that you ask?
Absolutely. I think sometimes I can spend 30 to 40 minutes only asking about the founders.
Yeah.
Why did they start? How did they meet the team? How did they identify the problem statement? What have they done to validate the problem statement? Why are they building the product the way they are building? And why fundraise at this stage? So the very elementary basic questions, even before we come to the product or we come to how they're going to make money, are something that we like to focus on. Because we come in at such an early stage, it's important for us to know that we are supporting folks where alignment is there.
Yeah, this definitely draws a defining line as to the founders need to really do their research before they come and speak to you, and not just come with a idea that okay, this is what I'm thinking and I want to brainstorm with you. I don't know if you're okay with that or your team does it with the founders.
Uh, we are okay with brainstorming, but brainstorming sessions will be different then.
Okay.
Like if you're giving 1 hour, 1.5 hour of
Yeah.
our time, then it becomes really difficult, right?
Yeah.
Like I tell founders that we do 100 calls a month, and sometimes I personally do 100 calls a month.
Yeah.
In those 100 calls, it's very difficult to actually be able to give complete bandwidth and mind space to something where you have to give a lot of feedback and brainstorm. But we do that. Like this office hour that we've recently launched for FinTech, where we have 25-30 minute session. It's
Yeah.
pure brainstorming session. They come
Okay.
with ideas, we talk about it, I give my thoughts, I tell them what they could do.
Yeah.
And there is no sort of intention of raising capital or wanting to give capital. If that comes out to be an eventual outcome of the discussion, that of course can happen.
Hmm.
And we want to do more of that as well, because a lot of founders do need a sounding board to sort of bounce off ideas with.
Yeah. Right. But apart from, taking 100 calls or so a month, how is it that you nourish your brain with so much of knowledge and different trends to keep up with what's happening in the industries that you invest into?
It's hard. Radhika, it's hard. But you have to make time for it, is what I have realized. Um, this job is about primary and secondary research, inward and outward. So, studying what is happening in your neighborhood, what founders are building, what investors are looking at, and forming a view. At the same time, going deep into certain subjects by reading up on it, understanding it a little bit more deeply, and questioning it on a first principle basis is the only way to really marry the two and come up with more novel thoughts.
Yeah.
So we have a consistent sort of effort that we do a thesis building meeting every day for every week for 2 hours on Mondays, where everyone on the team is working on a particular thesis and they have to come and discuss it. And then we all question them, which also sort of nourishes
Yeah.
everybody's brain and everybody learns along the way.
Yeah, I've seen this happen in a lot of VC funds that the Monday mornings are strictly to this, where they discuss about what they've spoken to, with the founders and what is it new that is happening in the industry. They really have to present. So, if I have to ask you, if somebody wants to enter into this industry, what are the traits that you look at, especially when it comes to hiring for your own team?
For us, what is the most important thing is culture fit. We believe deeply that VC is a lifestyle and not a job. Where you might go out for drinks with friends and realize that one of them is thinking of an idea and you get excited, you learn about it. At that point, you are doing your job, but you are not doing your job in the office, you're doing it outside.
Yeah.
Similarly, you might be partying with a bunch of investors and you might gather a lot of insights, but you're having a good time at the same time. So my only criteria is that the people that we bring onto the team, do they understand that this is more of a lifestyle and there has to be deep curiosity to really continue to learn new things that's happening and be excited about talking to founders.
Yeah.
If that happens, then everything else is something that falls along, right?
Got it. Yeah, it's a very nice line that you said that it's a lifestyle and not just a job. So if you think that you want your life to be like this, where you socialize and network and yet talk about work, and it doesn't look like work, then it is a right fit for you. But tell me one thing, is it really important to do an MBA before getting into this industry? Because many people have this thought, and just to get into the industry, they do their higher education. So I really want to know from you.
I think I have a contrarian view, but I deeply feel no. It's the worst use of anybody's 2 years
Yeah.
and 200K. The only reason to ever do an MBA, in my view, is to expand your network. And my question to people who are really seeking for an MBA or wanting to do an MBA is that will your network expand more by being in a classroom and a campus for 2 years, or dedicating 2 years to a job where
Yeah.
you're constantly learning and meeting people?
Right.
I know this was a trend back in the day where after 2 years, 3 years of pre-MBA analyst program, you were in a way sent, right? You were pushed to go out, get an MBA, and come back.
Yeah.
But that is changing because people are realizing that in the world of LinkedIn, in the world of social networking digitally, you don't quite require an MBA to do that. Back in the day, you had only a phone call with a phone directory that you had to go through and call people when most people won't pick up. And hence, a physical classroom of smart folks was required. But I would say definitely not. Please use those 2 years to network podcasts. Do creative things.
Yeah, this answer is gonna give a lot of people strength as to okay, fine. Now I'm clear in my mind. MBA is not the solution to life.
I don't know if every fund is following that. I don't know if everybody thinks the same way, but I think it's a complete waste of time.
Yeah. Correct. Did you do yourself? Did you go for
it? I didn't. And I had my GMAT and I was waiting for a long time that when do I feel my career stalls? So I go and do an MBA. Because MBA is done when a career stalls, in my view. Unless you're changing your career and moving into a different direction. It should be done when you feel that okay, you're not growing enough in your current role or your current area, and hence you go get an MBA to jump up, right? Because fortunately, I was in an environment where my career didn't stall because of my educational background at all, and hence, despite of having my GMAT and despite of sort of being ready to go and do an MBA, I never got a chance to do it, and I think that was the best thing ever because I was constantly learning outside.
Yeah, that's really cool. When did that happen? When you said that you heard somebody speak about the financial ratios?
This was back in 2008, 9.
In your graduation years, is it?
In my undergrad. It was my undergrad.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, understood. And my last question to you would be like, what can be done, at the college level or the educational institution level to get more women confident to get into this industry? Many people have a fear as to if they'll be able to make a stable career here because it's perceived to be male dominant. We agree or not, it is the thought generally. So how is
I
it
would
that?
say don't let your mind hold you back.
Yeah.
Because the minute you let that fear grasp you, you've already lost. If you think you can't do it because something is male dominated and you don't see another woman, you've already created a boundary for yourself that you can't go above. The less one thinks of it is the more. So I can tell you that it's not, I have been the single woman in the entire office for several months and years.
Yeah.
But what has helped is not thinking about it. If you constantly think about it, you are sort of draining yourself and you are entering into this, emotional valley of your own that doesn't allow you to go out and really flourish.
Yeah.
And even if that is a thought that is not going on in the other person's mind constantly, it's a thought that is going on in your mind constantly.
Yeah.
And hence limiting your abilities to really blossom. So I would say that regardless of what you're seeing around you, don't doubt yourself. Just go out and do it. If you like and you want to do it, then give it a try. If you fail, then try again. If you fail again and you realize not for you, give it up. But don't tell this to yourself upfront.
Right.
I think I was not only the only woman in the office, but I've often also been the only woman who has gone out with a bunch of these quote unquote, we used to call them frat boys, right? Because they're like a fraternity. And never felt a thing.
Yeah.
I think you just go out and you just be the lady with them. And you be a confident lady.
Right. I mean, my next question was about if you faced any challenges in boardroom or negotiations because you were the only women, but I'm sure that you've already answered it, that it doesn't matter to you. Only professional excellence is what you really care for.
It could have been that way. And I'm not denying it that those challenges don't exist.
Yeah.
They probably do exist and they might have happened to me as well. But I have just been so laser focused on what I need to get done that very consciously I don't let any of these things get to me. Because the minute I start letting these things get to me, I know I'm not getting anywhere.
Right.
And hence I also tend not to sort of, talk much about it. because this is just not in the back of my mind at all, ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very great thought. And when you have self control, you have power in your hand. Otherwise, when you lose your self control, you become emotional and everything is just gone. That is one thought that we'll carry from this interview. And of course, really loved hearing you and your thoughts. Love the way you've been so confident over the years. And I'm sure that will radiate into all of us who are listening. Yeah, so thanks, Paul, for your time. And we look forward to having some session with you in the future where we try to educate more and more women in finance. It'll be good to have you speak on some topic.
Yeah, sounds great, Radhika.
Yeah.
Really nice chatting with you, and you're doing a fantastic job on LinkedIn. So keep up with it. Good luck with the podcast series as well as the book. Look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, thanks a lot. And if you're in Bombay anytime, please let me know. We're in BKC only, and most of the meetings so happens here, so it won't be like too much of a travel. But it'll be good to catch up with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
And may I ask something?
Yeah.
What have you done before this?
So I did my graduation from Narsi Monji in Bombay and finished it in 2020. After that, I just used to write on LinkedIn. So a partner in a law firm just wrote to me that I'm starting up a new law firm. Why don't you join us for communication and content? So I started working in a law firm for about a year and a half. Hired lawyers being a non-lawyer. The first few initial hires were so bad, can't even tell you. But later on, really hired some of the smartest in the firm. And after that, the partner only saw my liking towards this ecosystem and how I love speaking to people network and really want to help people with my network as well. So on one of the days, a founder came in a law firm saying that I'm looking for fundraising. It was a gaming company. So my partner told me that why don't you help him, because you have your LinkedIn, see if you can get something. And I ended up connecting him with a lot of Silicon Valley investors, which his investment banker also couldn't. So he was very grateful to that, and he actually managed to raise some funds from there. So I thought that why not institutionalize this, and then we started Radically Yours, where we help early stage founders, connect with different investors. So yeah, that is how we started.
This is fantastic. This is amazing. May I ask which law firm is it?
It's Resolute Partners. It's from a partner called Ruchir Sinha, who was earlier at Nishit Desai Associates.
Very cool. And which founder was this?
It was Microgravity's founder.
Okay. Yeah,
You've spoken to him?
yeah, I've met them. I've been to their room here as well, the game room that they have, right? They have one in
Yeah.
Gurgaon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you told me about MediaTek. I was thinking only I'll talk about microgravity to you, and I thought that you might have already spoken because they've reached out to almost everyone now.
And we visited and we tried some of their games as well.
Yeah.
They have some really cool games. They have this golf course sort of simulation. So we tried some of the simulation. I spent almost 3 hours in their game room.
Oh, wow. That simulation is also something that we have in our office here in
Oh,
the
is
law
it?
firm.
Really?
So
Did they give it for free or are they charging?
no, of course they are charging, but they've connected us to somebody who could give us some discounts. So that is how it happened. But y'all did invest in them?
No, we don't do asset heavy investment.
Okay.
We do very asset light investments. And for us, gaming is more on gaming tech. So we'll do some like online game studios and things like that. But a lot of game tech is what we do.
Got it. Cool. Great chatting and
likewise, Radhika. Nice chatting to you. Have a good one.